Sophia, a nature photographer and adventure lover, was living her dream, solo paragliding over the endless green sea of the Amazon rainforest. The cool wind on her face, breathtaking aerial shots on her camera, and the majestic trees stretching below made everything feel like a dream. But suddenly, a sharp gust of wind twisted her glider sideways. Sophia's scream vanished into the wind. Thwack! With a thunderous crash, she slammed into the heart of the jungle. The paraglider tangled in the branches, and though her arm was injured, she miraculously survived. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on the ground, surrounded by towering trees, thick leaves, the scent of damp earth, and distant bird calls. There was no signal on her phone. In her bag, just a bottle of water, her camera, and one chocolate bar. Only one question echoed in her mind. How will I get out of here? But what she didn't know was that the real danger wasn't the forest. It was the eyes that had been watching her since day one. The sun had disappeared behind the jungle. The sky, painted in soft oranges and pinks, faded into darkness, like nature had blown out a candle. The moist night, the dew dripping from leaves, and the croaking frogs pressed down on Sophia's nerves. She quickly realized this wasn't an ordinary forest. The trees were enormous, their canopies so thick that daylight barely touched the forest floor. Nightfall here felt like stepping into a deep cave. The trees here towered above her like ancient giants, their massive canopies so thick that even during the day, light barely trickled through. As the sun vanished behind the green walls, it felt like stepping into a cave, deep, dark, and unknown. Sophia sat at the base of one of the massive trunks. She had cleared a small area and laid out some dry leaves to sit on. Her clothes were still damp, and her boots were caked with sticky jungle mud. Sleep seemed impossible, but her body ached with exhaustion. Every muscle screamed for rest. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a chocolate bar. Carefully, she broke it in half, ate one portion, and tucked the rest back in her bag. Then, she took out her camera. The battery was still at 50%, a precious resource. She turned it on and quietly snapped a few shots. An owl perched high on a twisted branch, the distant glow of fireflies flickering like silent stars, and the tiny shelter she had built with trembling hands. Maybe no one would ever see these photos, but maybe they would become her final memories. Leaning back against the tree, she closed her eyes and tried to calm her breath. The jungle buzzed with invisible life. 1,000 sounds filled the air: chirps, rustles, distant screeches. She told herself they were harmless. Then suddenly, crack, shh, something moved in the underbrush. Her eyes flew open. At first, she thought it might be a lizard or some creeping insect. But the sound was different. Not random scuttling, these were footsteps. Soft, yet heavy. Measured, controlled. Her heart began to race. Without making a sound, she reached toward her camera and activated the night vision mode. The screen flickered to green and white, revealing faint outlines through the trees. And then there it was. A narrow gap between the trunks. 2 glowing eyes, green, reflecting the faintest light. Still, watching. Moments later, a shape emerged from the shadows. Silent, graceful, powerful, a black panther. It moved like liquid shadow, gliding across the ground with barely a sound, as if it were a ghost or wind in solid form. Sophia stopped breathing. The panther was only a few steps away now, close enough that she could hear it breathing, slow, steady, controlled. Its sleek, dark body was marked with old scars, small patches where fur was thinner, signs that this predator had faced battles of its own. And yet, it did not attack, simply stood there watching her. There was no hunger in its eyes, no rage, no threat, just silence, a calm, haunting kind of curiosity, as if it, too, was trying to understand. Who is this girl? What is she doing here, alone in the wild? Then, with the same eerie stillness, it turned away and melted back into the undergrowth, vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared, like it had never been there at all. Sophia let out the breath she'd been holding. Her entire body trembled. not from fear alone, but from the sheer intensity of what had just happened. She was alive. If the panther had wanted to kill her, it could have done so in an instant. But it hadn't, and that moment left her with more than just relief. It left her with a message. This jungle didn't just belong to animals. It belonged to predators. But not all predators were the same. Her food was almost gone. Worse, her water supply was nearly empty. Without water, she couldn't survive more than 2 days. She picked up her backpack and started walking deeper into the forest, praying to find a spring or stream. The ground was muddy. After a few minutes, she stepped into a swampy patch. Suddenly, her foot sank. Then the other. She realized at once. She was trapped in a swamp. Panicking, she grabbed a root nearby to pull herself out, but the mud dragged her down like a monster. Her breathing grew faster. Her hands slipped. Hope began to fade. And then everything went black. When she woke up, sunlight trickled through the trees above. She lay under a large tree. Her clothes were torn and soaked, her arm injured, but she was alive. She tried to sit up, and then she saw them. Paw prints. Deep, fresh, clear. The panther had been there. Had it pulled her out of the swamp? Or had it just watched? She'd never know, but one thing was clear. She was alive because of it. Her fear began to change into something else. A strange comfort. Days passed. She learned the jungle's rhythm. Built a basic shelter. Found a spring. Tried to stay safe. One day, she heard a sharp cry. A rabbit, injured and whimpering. From the shadows, the black panther appeared again. It walked toward the rabbit, looked at it for a moment, but didn't attack. It simply lowered its head and walked away into the trees. Sophia was speechless. The panther was a predator, but not cruel. Maybe it saw something familiar in her. The same wounds, the same loneliness. A silent bond had formed between them. No words, just understanding. In the jungle, there's no spoken language. But eyes speak everything. After many tiring days, Sophia finally reached a rocky area. The land seemed clearer. In the distance, she saw a camp. At first, she thought it was a scientific research base. But as she got closer, her hopes shattered. Outside the tents were cages full of wild animals, injured, frightened. Some were declawed, some drugged. These weren't researchers. They were poachers, the true monsters in human skin. As soon as they saw Sophia, 2 men grabbed her. They snatched her bag and camera. "What did you see?" They tied her up and threw her into a tent. That night, the forest fell silent. Still, but something stirred in the air. And then, screams, roars, chaos. The black panther attacked. It leapt onto one of the poachers, tearing him down. The others ran screaming into the forest. In the chaos, Sophia untied herself and ran, her heart pounding, eyes wide with the light of freedom. That night, she understood the truth. The real beasts weren't in the jungle. They were the ones who called themselves human. Despite her wounds, hunger, and exhaustion, Sophia walked for days. She didn't know where she was headed, only that she must survive. And then, one morning, sunlight broke through the thinning trees, and she saw a white tent, a real research camp. She stumbled forward. People rushed to her, gave her water, helped her breathe. Days passed. Hospital, treatment, recovery. At night, when she closed her eyes, she still saw those glowing eyes, the panthers, pulling her back to the forest.